right, good morning. I want to wish everyone a happy hump day, Wednesday, last week of September. And without further ado, I want to introduce a great man, a fellow veteran from the Special Operations community. He's a retired Green Beret. He's been able to share quite a few things, and we just happen to just connect. But he has a book that's pretty much interesting book, which is called Tip of the Spear. And that book of the Tip of the Spear is something that's interesting for the fact from a different perspective, from a veteran's perspective who's retired and now that's home. So I just want to introduce the one and only Ryan Hendrickson. How you doing, Ryan?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on. Finally connected.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself, brother. Go ahead. You have the floor. And we will, I want to hear more about you because I want to respect your time and see what's going on and see what we can do, bring a situation awareness to people to understand what's going on. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah. So, I'm originally from Oregon, and I left for the military when I was 18. Pretty much, it's one of those things that, it was going to happen, with my upbringing and everything. My dad, pretty much saying, you're not, you can do whatever you want, but you can't stay here, kind of thing. Yeah. So left for the military when I was 18, and I was in 3 branches of the service, from Navy, Air Force to Army.
I didn't know that. Educate me on that. I want to hear how that goes.
Yeah, I started off in the Navy in the mid '90s because the other branch of the service, they just didn't need anybody. So even the Army, it was like an 8-month wait for an infantry contract. The Air Force, they kind of thought it was funny that I even walked into their recruiting office because of my test scores. And the Marines, the recruiter was just so like scary. I mean, the dude was like intense, and he'd have like a huge, probably an entire can of Copenhagen in his lip at once, knife handing, talking, chew spit going everywhere. And I was just like, oh my God, I don't want to be a Marine. You guys are scary, man. And then the Navy, he just, spoke the language of an 18-year-old that grew up in a town of 1,300 people, exotic ports, exotic women, and go down the list. And so the Navy it was. Then I did my time in the Navy, got out for a few years. And then 9/11 happened. And then we went into Iraq in 2003. I went back into the military. This time the Air Force, because I was married at the time to a girl who just got out of the Army, and she didn't want to, be an Army spouse. And so we agreed upon the Air Force. I retook tests and to get my, what is it called? An ASVAB, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get my ASVAB scores up, went to the Air Force. We got divorced, and I transitioned directly over to the Army, and and went through, infantry basic, jump school, selection, Q course, and on to 7th Special Forces Group. And yeah, that was that was 2008. So not that long ago, but a little while ago.
So Ryan, educate some of the people. And you got a lot of prior service people and active duty people. People don't understand from the selection of the special forces and part of the special operations. I was part of that community as from a support unit back about 35, 40 years ago. And so, so with us back in the Marine Corps, we did everything that the operators did. That was back in the day. So can you just educate people today how much of a difference that you went through in the selection and more or less leading up to your book? Can you do that for us?
Yeah. So, wow, that's a huge amount of time. So selection, coming out of the Navy, I was just, I was a bosun's mate. So an average rate, in the Air Force, I was an ammo troop. So not combat arms, definitely two, great jobs, but, it didn't equal, combat arms training, land navigation, stuff like that. So everything that I knew about being basically in the woods and doing Army grunt stuff, I guess you would call it, was just being a country boy growing up. So when I transferred over to the Army, I transferred over with an 18 X-ray contract. And I was very unsure because I was, the guys that were going to selection, they're prior infantry or prior ranger and stuff like that. And I didn't have any of that. I was Navy and then Air Force. And so I was very concerned with that. But what I did have was the fact that, I could basically get beat down and keep going. So I was like, all right. So, and selection's extremely tough. It's definitely, one, it's tough because it selects people. And even if you make it all the way through to the end of selection, you could be told, hey, thanks for trying. You're just not what we're looking for. And that happened to a lot of guys. They would be like a 21-day non-select, and that's horrible. Wow. But it's the whole man concept that they go off of. So you can't just, be strong and grunt all the way through it. They're looking for the whole man concept, and they do different events to kind of weed that out. And that's, that usually comes out in team week, because team week puts stressors on your body, mind, and everything else. Like it's just, it's intense. But the 18 X-ray course prepped us all for that. And basically what that was is guys that are coming in off the street or from another branch of the service, you can, you go through infantry basic jump school, and then you go through this prep course that gets you ready for selection. And so I felt physically I was ready. And then in the prep course, we were doing a lot of the basic Army stuff, land navigation, all the different things that we're going to be using in selection. And so, yeah, selection, it was tough, but the prep course did a pretty good job with getting us ready to go. But we still, we started out with 400 candidates. That's what I'm looking for. And 55 got selected. So it's still a decent attrition rate, but going there prepared was, and a lot of people listen and be like, well, yeah, of course you go there prepared. Why wouldn't you? Oh, you'd be surprised. But yeah, that's but selection. Yeah. I when you finish selection, you're like, all right, I did it. Yeah. Next thing is Green Beret. And oh no, selection is not the hardest part. The Q course will break you off.
So let me ask you a question. When you went to the Q course, did you go to SEER school as well as part of that?
Curriculum? Oh yeah. That's part of that's part of the Q course. Camp McCall does. I can't go into it too much, but no. Camp McCall does SEER on a whole nother level. And it's your face and chewing food normally usually takes a while after Camp McCall. Yeah.
So I went to SEER school when I was in the Marine Corps, right? And I went to Fort Stewart. Right? I went to Fort Stewart, and people didn't understand that back then. We're talking almost 40 years ago, and then SEER school kind of evolved because we went through the swamps and did that. That to me, that was a 6-week course of the SEER school. I don't know what the course is now, but that I went through that, and I was all I can tell you was a eye-opening experience. So I'm sure that it's pretty much has escalated, and based on the campaigns and everything else, have taught a lot of things. So I'm sure people don't understand the significance of SEER school. Correct?
It's extremely important. There's lessons that I learned in SEER school, and as far as the RTL goes, we called it Camp Slappy. But as far as all that, there were so many very, very good lessons learned under an extremely harsh and oftentimes violent, many times violent environment. But the lessons that you learn from that, and again, I don't want to dive too much into it, but the lessons that you learn from that, I do feel like they give you some stepping stones in case, the worst case scenario happens, whether it's detention by a government force or a radical movement or whatnot like that. And they do. I mean, I believe SEER is one of the better schools that the military has as a whole, whether it's Bangor, Maine, or Fairchild, Washington, or Camp McCall, or all the other ones that are out there. It's such an important course. Camp McCall just they kind of have their own way of doing it out there, and you learn a lot, but it hurts at times.
So let's talk about your deployment and how you led up to your book, right? Because I've been following you, and I've been, I'm going to have some couple other people, but this is the first time I have a operator, a Green Beret, in the show. So I like to have a different perspective from your lifestyle, how you view it, something that's current, and what does the book mean to you? Okay, go for it.
Yeah. So, I guess the book and what it means to me. So the book didn't actually start off as a book. I didn't sit down and in one day and say, you know what, I'm gonna write a book. The book started off as journaling and writing therapy, and basically what had happened was, so we were doing. So I stepped on an IED in 2010, wow. And from that injury, I had a lot of ups, or I'm sorry, I had a lot of downs, a few ups, but the mental minefield, I guess it's kind of a bad way of putting it, but whatever, I'm going with it. Yeah. The mental minefield that you go through, and the, I mean, it's such a mental, there's such a huge mental aspect to not only the veteran and the first responder communities, just because of the jobs that we do, but now you're adding injury on top of that. And so the book, when I recovered from my injuries, I went back to an ODA, and I was able to, I deployed back to Afghanistan 7 more times.
Wow.
And so, yeah. So I got blown up in 2010, and I went back in 12, 16, 17, 18, 20, 21.
So you're fresh. You're like fresh. Like, sorry to interrupt you. I just got to let people know, like, you're coming back like within months, and things are like still fresh in your mind, correct?
Yeah. So I was actually over there as a contractor for 20 and 21. We were a counter threat contractor, and so, yeah, I got home in July, but yeah, so, I did, I had a lot of mental struggles, especially laying there in the hospital room. 2010, everybody was getting wounded, and you're just seeing, you're seeing these lives torn apart by war, in some pretty grueling ways, because an IED war is a lot different than gunshots. I'm not saying one's worse than the other, but it's a mental aspect to it. You know what I mean?
So real quick, may I? Can you explain to people the significance from IED versus being shot behind the wire? People don't really understand that, and for you to actually experience, just, if you don't mind me asking, just share the significance, or give them a short version of it, if you don't mind.
So everybody it's, how do I put it? Nonstop. Everybody would say, I would rather be in a gunfight than trying to tiptoe around IEDs, because if you have the ability to shoot at me, I have the ability to kill you.
Right.
And this is a fight. This, now we're in a fight. IEDs are hidden. They're hidden killers, and you don't know what's been, where you're stepping. You don't know the area you're going into. IEDs usually come with an ambush of some kind of sort, or maybe you've just walked into a daisy chain and the pressure plate is ahead of the chain, or anything. It's a mental and I guess what I'm getting at there, not to go into like specific details of things, but it's the mental aspect of what IEDs do. IEDs are mentally extremely, extremely exhausting, because you don't know if that next step's going to be your last one. I mean, I never even thought in my life that we would ever do like a see you later to your legs, ritual before we head out on mission. But in the Panjway, we did it all the time. Like, well, I'm losing my legs today, and we would go, because there were so many IEDs out there. It's the mental aspect, the mental warfare that IEDs bring to it. That's what's so tough, because if you can shoot at me, yeah, an ambush is extremely scary. 7.62 zipping over your head and cracking all that stuff, yes. But if you're close enough to see me, I'm close enough to kill you. And right. And I believe my training is far superior to yours. So now we're going to duke it out. IEDs, they don't care how trained you are. Doesn't matter. And so that's the part with IEDs, is you could be as physically fit, as highly trained. You can be the highest level operator that the U.S. government has ever put out there. IED doesn't care. That's the problem, is the best you can do with IEDs is, yeah, you can train for them. And that's when, you have your 18 Charlies, EODs, or sappers. You clear slow, methodical clearance. But in a gunfight, there's nothing slow and methodical about it. Taliban were brilliant. And not to jump ahead, but these last missions I've done in Ukraine, removing landmines, they were like, what's just harder, Afghanistan or Ukraine? I said, Afghanistan by far, because the Taliban were brilliant at targeting U.S. troops. And and so I tell people, I learned from the best, the very best, Taliban and ISIS in Afghanistan. But they were brilliant at targeting, because they know, number one, our weakness is we won't leave a man on the battlefield. So and a lot of times our beliefs in saving your brother's life overrides your common sense. So you'll rush to him, and then you're hitting secondaries and all this other stuff. But the mental torment that IEDs bring to the battlefield, and then you add some gunfire to it. Oh man, the Taliban, they could hit you with harassing fire, and troops will do what we do best. We get cover and return fire, and in behind those covered areas, whether it's a 3-foot high mud hut wall or behind a tree, boom, 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 boom. They all have anti-personnel devices back there, whether it's an IED or a PNN mine, and they were brilliant at it. And they didn't even have to shoot at you, or they didn't even have to hit anybody with gunfire. It's just the sound that it makes, which we automatically react to, and they prey on that. And it was brilliant. It really was. So that's the difference between a gunfight and IEDs or landmines. Is psychologically, if you can shoot at me, I can shoot at you. IEDs, it's just slow, methodical, and that's the same thing with IDF, also indirect fire. Wow. It's artillery or mortars or Katyusha rockets or anything. You're just like, well, excuse my language. Well, shit, here it comes.
So let me ask you this, bro. You coming back, right, in your book, I'm sure that you're a contractor, and I don't want to get into the health of PTSD issues, coming home with the family. Have you got any treatment? I for one, I just had my PTSD issues from a long time ago, called the SGB, stellar gallium blockage, which they shoot in the neck. So I'm just going to ask you, because you're just fresh back and people don't understand. What about your situation? Just, you can elaborate, or you don't have to. You can just touch on a couple of things so people can understand that you coming back from being a contract just recently back in the stateside, there's a lot of things that are going in your life, So go ahead.
So PTS and me, that's where the book came from. And what I mean by that is, before I went down a rabbit trail, because I'm a shiny object kind of guy. But what I mean by that is, I was journaling because I'd seen I'd talked to a counselor before, and that just didn't do it. I've tried drinking away everything, that didn't do it. And I didn't want medication or anything like that for reasons that, everybody that are listening right now understand when, you're in our world. And so I was talking to our chaplain on one of our, 3 back-to-backs we did. And I was like, yeah, we can sit here and talk, and I could spill my guts to you, and it feels good at the time, but then you go and I go, and it's just dead air. It's like, what did we really accomplish? It's still there, on my chest. And so reversing back a little bit, when I was at Brooks Army Medical Center, I went through a really bad, really, really dark time in my life where I could have easily been one of the 22 a day. I understood why guys do it. And that's a dangerous spot to be in. So as I recovered from that and I started to take control over my life again, then, fast forward to our chaplain telling me, hey, have you ever thought about writing this out? It's not releasing it from you. It's just you're taking it from one spot and putting it to another, because that's a major downfall of many people is they want to make something like it never happened. Like, no. I want this like it never happened before, whether it's a combat veteran or somebody who's been gone through sexual assault or any numbers of things. They want to make it as if that event never happened. And then that makes it worse. There's nothing you can do about it. Whatever happened and whatever experiences you have, they happen. You can't change it. You're never going to be able to change it. And the harder you try to change it, the more it takes control over you until you come to a point to where many first responders and veterans do. They feel like they have no outs. And then they do what we are hearing is such a crisis right now in America, which it is, and suicide. But I decided to try and write some of this stuff out. And so I did. I just started writing, and one page turned into, 10 to 100 to 300 to go down the list. And it felt so good because I wasn't trying to make it like it never happened. I was just putting it in something tangible that I could look at whenever I wanted, and I can open up that laptop and do it. And those writings turned into, okay, I have this huge, just thousands of pages of stuff. So then I started organizing it kind of the way it is in the book. Well, I wanted to know what people thought. So I had a couple, close friends. And if you want to know someone's honest opinion, that it could be very, very brutally honest, give it to another special operator and see what they say. And they came back and said, dude, I've never talked to anybody about this before, but that's me in that book. Like, yeah, man, and then we would talk. And then, so I let family, next thing you know, I'm encouraged to try and find someone to help me, edit it. So it doesn't sound like Knuckle Dragon Ryan Hendrickson wrote it. But I got with an editor who said, yeah, this is a powerful message. No charge. And it took us a year to edit it. And then it went through the DOD review, and the DOD reviewer even got back to me and was like, yeah, this is a pretty powerful message.
So wait a minute, wait. So the DOD reviewed this? Let me ask you that question, because that's the first time I ever heard something when somebody has actually wrote a book. So explain that perspective. Why did that come into place? I need to know that, please. Go ahead.
So I went down the check sheet of writing a military book with what are they called? Factual events or true events, or like this event is not based on a true story or anything, but this is the events that happened. And I was warned by someone, hey, if you're talking about military or anything, it may help you just to have the DOD review it. So I got in contact with the office in DC that does all these reviews. And it took like 9 months because they're just slammed with stuff, whether it's a newspaper article or anything. But in the end, I didn't have to redact anything. And I have the memo saying that it was approved for release by the DOD. So whether I needed to do it or not, I don't know, but I did it.
So, Ryan, it's pretty interesting that people don't understand, but I gotta do an announcement. So if you like this segment of LinkedIn Perspective Share it, like it, tag it, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Somebody just asked if it's recorded. This is going to be live, and then it's going to be pre-recorded. I tagged Ryan, so Ryan can be able to share it. But if you want a copy, you can go to YouTube and subscribe to LinkedIn Perspective. And I have created that channel. That way you can actually utilize that, subscribe it. That's for you too, Ryan. You can utilize it. And then give me some feedback of how we're doing this talk. So go ahead, keep on going, bro. I just wanted to make that announcement.
Yeah. So I think number one, the DoD review, it allowed me, it gave me a couple options because I was very concerned with having a book published that made me that vulnerable, because I would go back and read things and I was like, man, I don't want people to know that that I went through this phase of my life where I had these struggles. I'm a Green Beret. I'm this and I'm that. And in the very end, and so the DoD review gave me more time to figure out ways to not release the book. And I was like, yeah, maybe the DoD review will come back because I have all these people saying, yeah, you should do it. But maybe the DoD review will come back and they'll be like, nope, can't do it. It's like, oh, thank goodness. But my dad had a conversation with me. He's like, he said, why, what's the problem? What are you worried about? And I was like, well, Dad, I mean, this isn't a sexy war story. I mean, this paints me out. And he goes, what, to be a human being with emotions and fears and cares and you shed a few tears over, buddies that you lost, like paints you out to be what? And I was like, well, I mean, it's kind of, it's kind of a vulnerable book. And he goes, yeah, congratulations. Welcome to being a human being there, stud. And he goes, I didn't think I raised such a selfish kid, but if your book could help one person going through a very dark time in their lives like you did, why wouldn't you want to help them? He goes, man, I really didn't think I raised a selfish son, but maybe I did. And I was like, all right. Point taken. Gotcha, man. And so, but I was looking for excuses to get out of it because I had gotten that far. And then, because I didn't think it was going to happen. I was like, yeah, right. A book? Sure. Okay.
So do you have sorry to interrupt. Do you have the book so you can show people what you got? You have the book right there? So so show them the book, bro. So tell them and explain where they can find the book as well. Okay, what are you going at?
Yeah, so the easiest place for the book is Amazon, and it's
I'm showing it to the people.
Yeah, it's doing pretty good on Amazon, but it's at major bookstores and stuff like that. And I guess, I mean, it's even in the Special Operations Museum and the U.S. Army Museum. So it's maybe somebody likes it. I don't know, but yeah, it was hard. It was hard to let myself be that vulnerable and to take a step back and to suck my pride up and understand somebody may read this book and it could save somebody's life. But I was so full of myself that I couldn't see that aspect of it. And I had to have a real long look in the mirror and understand, like, hey, you're not as cool as you think you are, dude. So get over yourself. And how about you try helping people out instead of worrying about you all the time? It's we, not me. And yeah, it went from there.
You know what, bro? You bring a lot of things in perspective. And let me ask you, what brought you into LinkedIn? Because I was following you and you were, you've been on Jocko's podcast and what is it that's so important now that you've been on LinkedIn that you want people to realize what you're all about? What's Ryan all about? Can you share that with them?
Yeah. So LinkedIn is the, out of the social media platforms, it's the professional one. And so I do, just for my book and my mission that I do in Ukraine, I have all the social media platforms, but LinkedIn is where, you're going to get that professional either connection or review or comments, or you're going to be connected with somebody that is not just like, hey, man, you're doing great stuff over there, but hey, you're doing great stuff. How can I help you? Or this is how you can help me. Or, hey, let me introduce you to this person. And that's what I really like about LinkedIn, is because it's a professional network. And I enjoy that aspect of LinkedIn. So you can go from, people watching cats box dogs to, hey, look, man, I want to talk to you, and I would like to connect you with this professional here. He does A, B, C, D, and E, and maybe something. And so that's what I really like about LinkedIn.
So, I as you know, I'm an advocate for veterans and veterans' rights, and to me, the special operations community is near and dear. I kind of grew up there from a support function, but people don't understand when you do a support function, it's like you're in it with the same team. You can't, you got to be able to support the operators in every facet there is, because at the end of the day, it's one unit, it's one team, it's one mission, and people don't understand that. Would you say that's correct?
Oh yeah, no. I say it's 100% correct. I mean, an ODA is made up with more support assets than it is actual ODA members, and our support guys. Oh man, I mean, your mission is either go or no go, depending on the support assets you have. Whether it's your intel guys, whether it's your collection guys, whether the motor pool. Oh man, I mean, think about that broke down RG. I mean, I don't know how to fix that stuff. Or you have your armament guys. You have, oh yeah, you are a go or no go. And then on the battlefield alone, we used to love to bring in mortarmen, infantry mortarmen, because that freed up our 18 Bravo to do other stuff. And we actually have a group of infantrymen that are mortarmen, that they live, eat, breathe, and sleep with that system. And then heavy weapons crew, a crew that their job is to lug around, either a 240 or whatever it is. And they can put that thing into action faster than anybody on an ODA, because, well, and I mean, please don't bust me up over saying that, guy, 18 Bravos out there, but these infantry guys, that's their entire world, is that 240 Bravo. Like, that is their world. And oh yeah, I used to love to exploit guys not exploit, that sounds bad, but bring in these infantry guys, or this analyst that he is specific to this area. And it's like, oh, well, we're in this area. Can you please come and be a part of the team and stuff like that? Yeah. If you have a good support basis, and you have good support element, your ODA is going to look like a rock star. And it's not necessarily what you're doing. It's everybody behind the scenes. That's what makes or breaks the mission right there. Yeah. It's great to get the GoPro videos of gunfights and stuff like that. But everything that led up to that gunfight. Yeah. That's a lot of hard work behind the scenes.
Well, Ryan, that's why I wanted to put it out there, because some people have a perception that's, with all due respect, operators just do it by their own. But there's a backstory. There's a support unit. There's people that make a difference, and it's a big difference to be able to go on a mission and come back alive with the resources that are provided, from intel to logistics to ammo to armory to all those GoPros, and people don't really understand that. But my next question to you is that, with suicide prevention at its highest right now, what would you like to convey to the general public from your perception of, you've been in the dark side, but what is the biggest thing that you want to leave them with, knowing that what Ryan's all about?
So I believe suicides are getting towards an all-time high. I believe the prevention part, we are still way behind on right now. And as a country, and as the military, we really need to address this. And we haven't even seen the tip of the iceberg yet, really. I mean, I think the water's still washing over everything, because Afghanistan hasn't fully set in. Yeah, we're a year removed from it. But what happened there hasn't fully set in with the troops, with the millions of service members that went in and out of Afghanistan, and are now looking at it and saying, well, what was it all for? And I definitely believe that. So right now we have a mental health crisis on our hands, not just with veterans, but now you take a first responder community that basically there's a war on police officers for whatever reason. I have no idea, but this police officer, he'll go to work and he'll risk his life to do A, B, C, D, or E. And yes, I got it. There may be some people out here with a personal experience with a law enforcement professional that went wrong. That's not all police officers. So you gotta widen your view a little bit. And I'm not saying this to the listeners, but a lot of Americans are so tunnel visioned and ignorant that they think that their one encounter that was bad with a law enforcement professional is what they're all like. It's so dumb. That's the most ignorant thing that we're doing right now. And we're believing the news. Oh, look at what these cops did to this guy. That's such a small portion of the entire police force. But all of the first responders are feeling this negativity towards them. And what's it for? Why are we doing this? If you think about us like this, then why do I care? Why am I doing this? Right. And watch the news and see what's going on right now. I just watched the news yesterday. A Wawa in Pennsylvania was just raided. Hundreds of people. And it's just like, what is going on? But veterans, yeah, the full impact of what happened and the fallout of Afghanistan, which I do believe it was a fallout. That's my opinion.
Right.
But people haven't fully, that hasn't fully sunk in yet. We haven't seen I don't even think we've seen a drop in the bucket compared to what is coming up mentally for a lot of these veterans that did. I mean, they went over there with the belief that they were protecting our country and they were helping others, and things happened the way they did. We left the way we did. And once that fully sets in, I believe if we don't get a handle on this, the suicide rates are gonna continue to climb because they're already astronomically high right now. And a lot of people say, well, then what's the answer? And that's the big question. But I do believe, number one, awareness is the answer. And that's kind of like what you're doing. That's what a lot of other platforms do. But it's not just getting online and talking about it like we're doing. So that's right. Great. You can talk about it. It's, you can hang the suicide prevention hotline sticker up on your account and be like, yeah, call this number if you ever need help. That's not the answer at all. It's a tribe mentality. And what I really like about what some of these groups in the States are doing is they're creating programs to bring people in, because the military members we're a tribe, we're a pack. We have that pack mentality, that tribe mentality. And if you understand, that's one of the reasons why I released the book. It's because maybe someone's going to read it and be like, wow, okay, so I'm not the only one. Mm-hmm. And look, and I'm not saying I'm anything special because I was Green Beret, because I'm not. It's a job. But if this guy as a Green Beret went through these mental struggles that I'm going through too, well, okay, I'm not alone. It's kind of using that platform to show people like, look, man, this is a human being thing. It's not a you alone thing. And then you couple that with the awareness, and then the different groups and activities and stuff like that are popping up left and right to bring in, these veterans into this tribe. I understand, man, I got it. Mm-hmm. And then that starts to spread. Hope starts to spread, and giving people the opportunity to be around a group of people that understand them. Because what's the worst thing in the world for somebody? To spill your guts to someone that has no effing clue what you're talking about. Correct. Yeah. It's like, wait a second. You have no clue what I'm talking about. But veterans also, you have to, my message to veterans is they got to take responsibility for themselves also. Right. And what I mean by that is you're not the victim. A lot of people are putting themselves into this victim role. And then from the victimization, they're entitling themselves. Well, I served my country. You are free because of me.
Mm-hmm.
I deserve, and that I deserve slope is a very, very slippery one. But that slippery slope leads to victimization. So you start entitled, hey, thank you for your service. What do you know about me? Think you would thank me for my service? That's it? Do you know what I've done? I've stepped on an IED. I've gotten shot. I did A, B, C, D, or E. I lost buddies here, buddies here, buddies here. Great, man. They weren't there. And even if they were there, they're not going to understand because they're not you. But a lot of veterans with this entitlement mindset are trying to force this belief on your everyday American. Like, you got to understand what I went through for you. I did this for you. You're free because of me. All this other stuff. And so they become entitled to the service that they think they had. And then when they don't get that entitlement fulfilled, and they never will, because it's impossible. I mean, look at America right now. Look at our kids and a bunch of entitled brats running around, and there's no fulfillment for entitlement. It's impossible, because once you get what you think you're entitled to, you want more. You become even more entitled, and we feed the entitlement. Well, you cannot fulfill entitlement. So then you slide down that slope to victimization, and you become a victim. Well, I did all this for you guys, and look at what's happening to me. This isn't fair. Why me? How come this? And you waller in this victimization, pit, refusing to take control and climb out yourself. And you waller in this pit of victimization until finally, you've pushed every hand away from you that's reaching down. Hey, let me help you out, man. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know where I've been, all this other stuff, until in the end, a lot of times people are making that ultimate decision. And I believe that that's a huge problem right now in the military and in our youth, is this entitlement leading to victimization. And then I have no other option.
So let me ask you this, Ryan, and that's a good analogy from somebody that's coming back. You're back, you're home, you're avoiding this Cat 5 possibly over there in Florida. Your family, your immediate family. I'm sure you have inner family. You have a relationship, kids. What does that mean to you now that you've come back to the country and doing everything else? Since 2021.
So when I came back from Afghanistan, I had a lot of questions, uncertainties, and I had a major issue with something that most veterans and law enforcement officials, or hell, first responders that leave their job. I had the question of, who is Ryan Hendrickson and what's my purpose? My purpose, my entire military career, has been Afghanistan or Iraq. Who am I? What's my purpose? I don't have a purpose. Am I just going to sit out here on my tractor and bush hog every other day just because I don't have a job? I don't know what to do. I don't know who I am. I'm not fulfilled. I have this major gap in my life because I don't have a purpose. So February 24th, 2022, Russia went into Ukraine.
Right.
And all of a sudden now, and I'm still a government contractor, but now, you're watching on TV, the heartstrings are pulling, and it's that military mentality. How can I help? Where I want to do my part. Well, my part and my prayers and God speaking to me. And again, I don't want to go down the religious path, but my answer was, I need to have a purpose. Right now, I'm just left, and through life. I don't have a purpose or a meaning. I'm not changing, I'm not doing anything, because in the end, what does everyone really want to know? Did I do anything that to help make the world a better place, or how will people remember me by, or fill in all those blanks? Well, I was watching TV every single day and talking with one of my friends, and he was like, yeah, man, my family has a missionary organization in Ukraine right now, and they're literally driving to the areas before as the Russians are pushing to these areas. We drive buses and vans there, load up on women and kids to the best we can, and then we drive out. And he's like, these are all basically early 20-year-old kids that are Ukrainian that stayed behind to help out the missionary organization, and they could use some military guidance if you want. And so I did. I just going on hope. I quit my job I quit my contracting job. I went over to Ukraine in March, and I started, I was driving vans, and we were going into areas that civilians were needing to, women and children. The men would stay behind to fight, but women and children were needing to evac out of because the Russians were moving in. And then as April and May rolled around, now we're starting to bring food supplies, medical supplies, and all this other stuff to these areas that the Russians have left. And now all of a sudden I have this purpose, and I'm fulfilled. And I'm not pulling a trigger. I'm not taking life. I'm not in combat. I'm not any of that. I'm a humanitarian, non-combat or combatant, and all I'm doing is I'm helping people. And so now all of a sudden I have this purpose, and it feels good. I'm looking at myself, and I'm like, wow, okay, man, like this. And I'm not in now. All of a sudden, all of these, a lot of these mental, some of the mental minefields that I had going on, they're clearing up in my mind. Mm-hmm. And my purpose of helping people is that this is taking over. Who is Ryan Hendrickson? It's no longer I'm retired Green Beret, stepped on an IED, filling all the blanks. Now it's like I'm a humanitarian worker in Ukraine, and we're evacuating, innocent civilians out of conflict areas. And that purpose expanded into, well, now that the Russians have, left a lot of these areas and all the landmines that are left behind, well, I was an 18 Charlie. I can find landmines either by stepping on them or finding them the correct way with a mine detector, but I can find a landmine. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, I can help with this. Who's removing all these mines out of the farm fields and all these other places for the civilians? They're like, we don't have anybody. The military is fighting a war right now. But once we free our land of Russian occupation, then we'll come back in and remove landmines. It's like, so what do you guys do in the meantime? They're like, teach your kids what to play with and what not to play with. I was like, yeah, man. So I decided that, you know what? I'm going to use my experiences in life and my experience that, I got from the military with finding IEDs and landmines and stuff like that. And I'm going to use these experiences to help people. And people ask me, I've been asked on multiple occasions, like, well, is there a cure for PTSD? Or is there a cure? Or what's the fountain of youth? And it's like, I never knew until this year, 44 years old. And the cure for PTS and the cure and the fountain of youth is helping people. Simple. You're on earth for a very, very short amount of time. Mm-hmm. And what you do. So I have a belief in life, and it's the beginning chapter of your life and the end chapter of your life is already written. It's like a book. Which is kind of funny because I wrote a book, kind of. But the beginning chapter and the end chapter, that's already written. In my belief, this is just Ryan Hendrickson. That's all God's plan. When you're born and when you die.
Right.
What you do in the middle, those pages in the middle, that's up to you. Are those pages is that book going to be worth reading when you move on from life? That's completely up to you. And yeah.
So let me ask you a question, right? People are just following Ukraine. You've been to Iraq. You spend most of your time in Afghanistan. you see Ukraine. Give people your version of how different it is, because people follow the news and they think Ukraine, but they don't fully understand. And I'm sure you're the first one that can honestly say that to the general public from your views as a prior service operator and a humanitarian. Sorry to interrupt you, but I needed to get that.
Yeah, no worries at all. So Ukraine is, there are parts of Ukraine that are extremely bad. It is World War I style fighting. Absolutely amazing. Ukraine, there's also a majority of Ukraine that is absolutely beautiful. And I'm taking my wife there in April. I'm going back in November for another mission, and then I'm taking her there in April. It's gorgeous. Lviv and Kyiv and Chernobyl and all these other places. Yes, is it a country at war? It absolutely is. But when people think of Ukraine, they think the entire country is at war. That is not the case. There are parts of Ukraine that are extremely bad. There's hundreds of Ukrainian troops and Russian troops dying every day. But I've also talked to Western volunteers that head over there for the glory of combat. And I understand that, because men have been going to war for hundreds of years to answer that one question: what would I do when someone's trying to kill me? How would I react? Am I going to, the fight or flight? What's going to happen to me when I'm actually in combat, kill or be killed? That's a question for some reason we all have as men. I don't know. Well, we all used to have as men. I can't really speak to today's generation, but a lot of kids are flocking over there to answer that question, and they don't understand that you're not going to answer that question with artillery and rockets. You're not going to see the enemy right now. It is very rare, unless you're with the Ukrainian Special Operations. It is very rare you're going to see the enemy. You're going to sit inside of a trench, and you're going to be a part of this World War I style, minus the gas, this World War I style artillery barrage. And it is 2022, and we're back in 1914. It's absolutely insane what I've seen over there. And so the biggest difference that, I would say with Iraq, Afghanistan, and Ukraine, because I get this question all the time: what's worse? Well, it depends on what you think is worse. To me, I can, the IED situation and the mental torment that the Taliban did or played on us with these IEDs, and being a insurgency, not a uniformed military, a guerrilla war. I mean, the death rate isn't the same, but mentally, to me, Afghanistan was very, very mentally taxing. Ukraine, IDF is extremely mentally. It's also very. It's mental warfare, because you don't know. You'll hear the incoming, and you just like, well, I hope, because they're shooting thousands of rounds. Mm-hmm. So it just, to compare it is very hard, because you're giving up one you're comparing one very mentally destructive, means of war with IEDs to another one with IDF. Yes, the Russians love landmines. Put them everywhere. So do the Ukrainians. Put them everywhere. But for me, military grade landmines are a lot easier to deal with than these IEDs in Iraq and Afghanistan, because you don't know the bomb maker. You don't know the switches he used. You don't know, you don't even know if he was good or not. That, at least with a military grade landmine that an 18-year-old Russian can put in, if you can put it in, I can disarm it. What the Russians hope to do is to fill this entire area with so many mines that you find 99, I hit you with 100.
Wow. So last thing, Ryan, show them your book again and explain us a bit, because we're going to wrap up, and just tell them more about your book. You got about a couple minutes. So just go ahead. Talk about your book.
So yeah, Tip Spear, again, didn't start off as a book. It started off as, I didn't know it was a thing, but it is. It's writing therapy. And so as I would, there'd be times I'd wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and just fill pages with stuff. And I mean, this goes from childhood to, to military, to what I dealt with, some of my darkest times of my life when I could literally see, like, yep, I see why guys are committing suicide. Not a bad option. I had a point in my life where I went through that, and I write about it here. It's not a sexy war story. It's not a chest pounding, look at what I did. If you're looking for that, this isn't the book, but this is a very vulnerable look at what a normal human being who just so happened to be a Green Beret, I like to tell guys all the time, just because that was my job, that's not who I am. I'm Ryan Hendrickson, a normal human being that I just so happen to have the opportunity to go that route. There's guys that are way, way more qualified than I am that just chose to do another route. It's a job. But this is basically a very vulnerable book, and I learned a lesson here that there's strength through vulnerability. Nobody likes vulnerability. And we all have this pride, our pride thing, but making yourself vulnerable to help other people out, there's a lot of strength in that. And you can really figure out who you are as a man or a woman by I'm not saying making yourself vulnerable by, I don't know, walking to the suburbs of Chicago with, I don't know, the wrong color bandana or something like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about making yourself vulnerable to help other people, understanding like, hey, some of your struggles that you went through in life, you may just save somebody else's life by helping them.
Cool.
And again, I tell everybody, we're on this earth for a very short amount of time. And that age-old question, how will I be remembered? That's up to you. Those middle pages of your book are up to you. But guess what? You help people, and that message it'll be there forever.
So you can tell them that it's located in Amazon, right?
Yes.
So last things, Ryan, it's been a pleasure. So let me ask you, now that we met, what have you learned about this conversation and this podcast, and what would you like to leave the general public with this, your final notes, final says?
So this conversation has been amazing, because mental health it's huge. It's a huge motivator of mine, and it's a crisis. Like I was saying earlier, that I don't think we've even seen I don't think we've seen the full effect of this mental health crisis that we're going through right now, whether it's law enforcement, first responders, or veterans. So no, this basically this conversation that we had, this is helping to raise awareness to where people may start searching out their tribe, and having that pack that understands them, and knowing that they're not alone. There are plenty of people out there and organizations out there, and that you can, you're going to find somebody that understands what you're going through. Mm-hmm. And when you realize you're not alone, well, then now you're on the road to recovery. And yeah.
So look, bro, it's been awesome. I want to really thank you for the time. I think it's very important. If you like this segment of LinkedIn Perspective, share it, like it, tag it, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Ryan, I really appreciate, I respect your time, and just stand by. I'm going to sign off for it. So if people like it, share it, like it, tag it, another episode, a live segment of LinkedIn Perspective. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Simplify, always beside you. Thank you. Stand by, bro.